Pakicetus. It's no longer breaking news that this hoofed land-dwelling mammal is the ancestor of modern whales. It's also widely known that, fast forward to about 48 million years ago, another ancestor, Ambulocetus, took to the water, sparking a massive divergence of species that eventually evolved into the cetaceans we know today. Now here's a question that might actually give you pause. Considering it's been over 40 million years since these mammals returned to the water, why didn't they just evolve gills like other fish? Think about it. In the relatively short span of 3 million years, humanity evolved into a culture-bearing species with significantly larger brains. Over tens of millions of years, dinosaurs grew feathers and took to the skies as birds. And even tiny, unremarkable mammals managed to evolve wings and become bats. With all that in mind, why couldn't whales, who've been navigating the oceans for over 40 million years, evolve something as seemingly basic as gills? In fact, it's a tragic but not uncommon reality to see migrating gray whales get trapped under thick Alaskan ice, ultimately drowning because they can't break through to breathe. Witnessing such harsh realities naturally leads to a reasonable doubt. Shouldn't the intense selective pressure of the marine environment have forced at least some cetaceans to evolve gills? The story of whales and gills starts right now. Truth be told, the lack of gills isn't just a whale problem. You see it in other mammals like the manatees floating off the coast of Florida, as well as dugongs, sea snakes, and sea turtles. Even the apex marine reptiles that once ruled prehistoric oceans like ichthyosaurs, mosasaurs, and plesiosaurs were entirely gill-less. Regarding this, British biologist and science writer Andy Dobson points out in his book, Flaws of Nature, just because an animal is aquatic doesn't necessarily mean it needs gills. Whales tackled the breathing challenges of aquatic life not by growing gills, but through other brilliant compensatory adaptations. For instance, their nostrils, what we call blowholes, migrated to the top of their heads, allowing them to take a full breath the instant they break the surface. These blowholes are also equipped with powerful muscular valves that snap shut underwater, creating a completely watertight seal. It's a respiratory system practically tailor-made for the ocean. On top of that, a whale's lungs are 4 times more efficient at extracting oxygen than a human's. Their muscle tissues can even store oxygen at highly concentrated levels. So when they dive thousands of feet into the abyss, they can literally tap into these oxygen reserves to stay active for extended periods. Even so, we can't quite shake that fundamental question about evolving gills. After all, the distant ancestors of both humans and whales were fish that started out with gills, and some of their descendants eventually crawled onto land and at some point clearly evolved lungs. By that logic, wouldn't it be entirely possible for mammals returning to the sea to evolve gills all over again? Dr. Dobson explains that this was practically impossible because of a core principle of evolutionary theory, the critical importance of intermediate advantages. Take our lungs, for example. The lungs of modern land animals actually evolved from the swim bladders of ancient bony fish. But here's the catch. The swim bladder wasn't originally meant for breathing. It played a massive role in helping bony fish thrive in the ocean. Unlike cartilaginous fish like sharks, which lack swim bladders, bony fish could regulate their buoyancy by pulling gas from their blood into this bladder. This gave them the incredible advantage of moving up and down the water column without exerting much energy at all. Sharks, on the other hand, have to keep swimming constantly just to keep from sinking. Meanwhile, fish like the sea robins found along U.S. coasts actually vibrate their swim bladders to produce sounds during mating season. In some fish, the bladder is even connected to the inner ear, functioning as a kind of hearing organ. In other words, the swim bladder didn't just pop up as prep work for future lung breathing, it existed because it provided real immediate benefits for survival and reproduction. And when some of these fish with primitive swim bladders eventually stumbled onto land, this organ gradually evolved into the lungs we know today. Even today, certain fish like lungfish and electric eels in Africa and South America get the vast majority of their oxygen through this exact type of air breathing. For a specific organ to evolve, every single agonizingly long intermediate step leading up to the final product has to offer some kind of survival edge. As another example, the early feathers on theropod dinosaurs weren't designed for flight. They were mainly used for insulation, to retain body heat, or for mating displays. Over time, they started acting as a gliding aid when jumping from trees, which proved hugely beneficial for catching prey or escaping predators. Simply put, the perfect wings that modern birds possess only came to be because every intermediate stage offered a rock-solid advantage for survival and reproduction. The reason humans gradually lost their body hair follows a similar logic. Early hominids were certainly as hairy as today's chimpanzees, but there were clear perks at every step as that hair gradually thinned out and disappeared. Having less hair meant you were far safer from parasites like fleas and ticks, and it made sweating a much more efficient way to regulate heat body under the blistering African savanna sun. Because every stage of hair loss worked in favor of our survival and reproduction, we ultimately ended up as the relatively hairless modern humans we are today. However, the situation for whales was entirely different. For gills to evolve in a marine mammal, the very first prerequisite is the development of a brand new internal organ capable of pulling oxygen directly from seawater. Unfortunately, the oxygen concentration dissolved in seawater is roughly 30 times lower than in the exact same volume of air. Let's put this into perspective. To get the same amount of oxygen you'd get from breathing in just 1 gallon of air, you'd have to constantly gulp down and filter over 30 gallons of seawater. Ultimately, the intermediate stage wherein lung-breathing mammal tries to sprout a water-filtering internal organ would have offered zero survival benefit, acting only as a massive drain on energy. And there's a second hurdle. Dr. Dobson adds that the high salinity of seawater would have acted as a sort of toxin, and the metabolic cost for a mammalian body to desalinate and filter it would have simply been unbearable. Conversely, he notes that when fish first ventured onto land, the evolution of air breathing happened in a much friendlier environment. The inhaled air wasn't toxic, requiring no internal purification, and warming it up wasn't overly difficult either. Because of this, it's theorized they could smoothly transition through the stages of turning internal organs into lungs. So, whales abandoned the impossibly long path toward evolving gills. Instead, they cleverly patched up other parts of their bodies, forging their own optimal strategies tailored for the marine environment. And this is clearly written deep within their DNA. Back in 2019, Dr. Michael Hiller, a geneticist at the Senckenberg Research Institute in Germany, discovered that roughly 85 genes were permanently deactivated as whales adapted to the ocean. For example, cetaceans lacked the specific genes responsible for producing saliva. In an environment where your mouth is constantly flooded with seawater, wasting energy to produce spit is completely pointless. He also uncovered the startling fact that some of the genes responsible for synthesizing melatonin, which regulates sleep rhythms, have lost their function in whales. Whales have to surface to breathe, even when they're in a deep sleep. To pull this off, they engage in what's known as unihemispheric sleep, where half of their brain always stays awake. As a result, melatonin, which dictates the deep sleep cycles of mammals, simply wasn't useful to them anymore. On top of that, 2 genes related to blood clotting are completely inactive in cetaceans. This actually prevents nitrogen bubbles or blood clots from forming when their blood vessels constrict extremely tightly during deep-sea dives. Ironically, these genetic defects are exactly what gave them the upper hand for long-term survival in the ocean. Furthermore, research papers show that by expressing genes that keep their bone density incredibly low compared to land mammals, whales can easily achieve buoyancy in the water despite their massive size. All this goes to show that evolution isn't a master architect drawing up perfect blueprints from scratch. Rather, it's more like a clumsy tinkerer scraping together whatever materials are lying around to hack together an efficient solution for the current situation. The pouch of the Australian koala is a prime example. If you look closely at a koala's pouch, you'll notice something really bizarre about the way it's facing. Instead of opening upwards toward the head like a kangaroo's, it actually opens downwards, almost defying gravity. Evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins offers a brilliantly simple explanation for this. Koalas descended from a wombat-like ancestor. Taxonomically speaking, koalas and wombats both belong to the same suborder, Vombitiformes. Their ancient common ancestor was a phenomenal digger. Imagine if its pouch had opened upwards like a kangaroo's. Every time the mother dug into the dirt with her front paws, a shower of soil and dust would have cascaded right onto her babies. Therefore, having a downward-facing pouch was absolutely essential for successful reproduction. Then, one day, some of these ancestors decided to completely relocate to the trees for survival. But according to the rules of evolution, completely ripping out and redesigning the layout of the pouch was off the table. Instead, the koala went with a different sort of compensatory adaptation. They developed a highly robust sphincter muscle at the pouch opening to prevent their joeys from plummeting to the forest floor, brilliantly countering a fatal design flaw. Just like whales evolving a highly efficient sealable blowhole instead of gills. As nature shows us, sometimes these clumsy situational patches were never the perfect ultimate answer, but in the face of harsh environments, they were the absolute best option at the time, and ultimately turned out to be a pretty solid survival strategy. And perhaps this characteristic of nature closely mirrors our own lives today. We might not be able to grasp perfection in our current circumstances, but we make the best possible choices day by day. Those awkward, imperfect, yet balanced good enough strategies are exactly what ultimately and firmly guide us down an unexpectedly better path. Enduring vast stretches of time without being perfect or majestic, but simply surviving, this is the marvel of evolutionary history, and through its traces, we learn yet another lesson. Exploring historical context through forgotten records, this has been Flat Archive. Thank you.